I'm ready. To build some suspense, I figured I'd zoom into that thing. We'll discuss that a little bit in this episode of Diluvian Delusion. Earlier, just a little bit ago, in fact, we just finished a study about the Great Deluge, where the channel gets its name, Diluvian. Studying the antediluvian world versus the post-diluvian world we live in today. And because I will have just posted that episode, I'm just going to jump right into where we left off, because we left off with a good spot, but it was 48 minutes already, so I concluded the last video. And also, we had alluded to this a bit, and I'll discuss it more, but I want to continue with the scripture real quick, because we got to such a good verse. We're in Genesis chapter 8, verse 9. And again, I want to welcome everybody. This is not necessarily a Bible study. What we're doing is studying current affairs and historical records, archaeological records, and comparing them. How can we learn? History can teach us, I believe. So this is a historical text research, a chain of title search, if you will, a run sheet, if you will. That's what I intend here. As I've said before, I do read out of the Holy Bible typically, but right over there I've got the book of Taoism, a book on Norse faith, book on Egyptian, Hindu and Buddhism, right there, the Idiot's Guide to both those, literally. So I want this to be an exhaustive study, but I honestly just can't get around the fact that I personally find the most truth resounding from this text. And reading those texts, this one resounds the most truthful. I can't get around that. So let's jump back into this verse, and then we'll get to this image over here. So chapter 8, verse 9. Noah has let a dove out, and Noah is trying to identify if there is dry land, trying to identify if there's a place to lay down, salvation, if you will. Anyway, he just, without getting too poetic, he's looking for dry land, and he lets out a raven, which is also imagery. It's a dark bird. A raven is a dead one, if you will. In imagery, this is literary. A raven is the image of a dark one, a dead one. He is let go out of the window to go around the earth and go search. The raven does not come back. He spends his whole life out there, is what the text just said in the last video. Setting up the picture here. Then we read in the last verses there, verses 8 and 9, he let out a dove now, which is the image of a white bird. Typically, this is from a literary standpoint. The image of lets out a dove, a literal dove, but the image is a clean animal, a pure, a holy one, if you will. And lets out the holy one, the dove, in imagery. And the dove goes out and searches the world as well, just like the raven did. But the dove, in contrast, comes back to his originator, Noah. In the imagery here, the way it's stated, I'm going to read it. But the dove found no resting place for the sole of her foot. That's what the author paints it as. Found no resting place for the sole of her foot. So she returned to him, the image, it's Noah, into the ark, for the water was on the surface of all the earth. Then he put out his hand and took her, the dove, and brought her into the ark into himself. So I believe the author is painting this highly illustrated. There's a lot of words in there that he could have said it very concisely, but he's intentionally painting this vivid image of Noah, who is like the God character, I believe, in this, the creator image, welcoming back one of the two birds. Both of them went out into the world, and one of them came back into his heart. So that's why the second one is imaged as a holy one. It's retrospective, I believe. I don't believe the raven was destined to not come back. It's a retroactive image, in my opinion, where the dove is imaged as the clean creature only because he came back to Noah. Not that the black one was the what was it? The image of murder in the Norse culture, the raven. He wasn't. I don't think the imagery was he was destined to never come back. I think it's a retroactive imagery, but that's my opinion. I think, but the dove is welcomed and loved, and he is the Holy One only because he's come back to the bosom of the Lord character in this scenario, Noah, physically. Just in my opinion, a cool little image there. I think that's a cool image. The raven definitely could have come back. He just didn't. And that's why the story is palpable. Because, and if it wasn't evident, sorry, I didn't conclude there. I skipped over that. The conclusion, literary, is for us humans. We are also let go by our creator, our loved one, our big guy. It also definitely is highlighting the image of the ark just as much as Noah. So ark being, I would image God and his domain. God, Noah and the ark, God and his domain, creating us, letting us out, the spark in his eye, letting us go into the earth to go around, just like the birds did. They went this way and went that way. And a portion of them came back to him and a portion of them didn't. In that case, it was 1 and 1, but a portion of them came back to him, and they were the sanctified, is the image that were given. And I have friends who say, well, that's very unfair. And I think they're right. In human context, perhaps it is. They laugh when they know exactly what I'm saying. Well, that really doesn't matter. Life isn't fair. The rules weren't made by us. We can't stipulate them. If that is the rules, it might be unfair, but that doesn't mean the Lord doesn't love us. The Lord loves us so much. That's why it's that way, even if we feel it's unfair. I know that's a lot to swallow. I had to get it out so I could swallow some water. But I know that's a lot to swallow. Again, in these videos, I talk quickly often. I'm trying to get a lot out. Just because there's so much here. So, he's brought the dove back into his bosom, so to speak. So he waited yet another 7 days. And again, he sent out the dove from the ark. The dove came to him toward evening, and behold, in her beak was a freshly picked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the water was abated from the earth. So there will be imagery there. I'm not prepared to unpack at the moment. The number 7 is mentioned. We discussed the importance of numerology, not branching off so much that you worship it, like the faith that is still present today. It was introduced, what was it called? It had a very interesting name. I actually looked it up after one of the last videos I was mentioning it. I couldn't think of the name. But the current name is actually numerology. The faith today is actually called numerology, but it started as, it's on the tip of my tongue. I'll remember later when it's not supposed to. Anyway, those numbers are important. Noah had already waited 150 days, arguably. At least, more, than 40 before that, at least. There's different, that deserves more unpacking. I'm going to gloss over it because I don't want to get too bogged down. I want to get to trying to debunk other entities, other non-human entities. I am my genome is directly related. Actually, I've actually looked it up. It's actually through Japheth, a matter of fact. But I was going to say to one of the three sons of Noah, directly as a human being, unequivocally, has to be. That's been proven by secular scientists as well as obviously Christian ones. We all have a genome going back to a base pair, and that base pair branched off into three primary sections. And I happen to be of the one we call in English Japheth, by the way. But yes, that lineage. Where was I going with that? Sometimes I lose my train of thought. Anyway, he had waited 7 days. I forget where I was going with that. Yes. We're all related to the sons of Noah, but I'm curious about perhaps if a few Nephilim, the giant ones, were able to survive somehow, and then that's how we got some remnants. I don't know. I mean, that sounds crazy as I'm saying it. I just am intrigued, and I want to study the Bible for answers. I don't want to just jump onto Google and say, "Hey, Google, do the Nephilim survive the flood?" Like, that's, I don't mean to laugh, but I feel like that's a lot of what my generation would do, and my kids' generation. Hey, Google, do the Nephilim survive the flood? And just to be clear, I do not believe that is an appropriate way to do it. I do not believe that will show the truth, nor invoke the Holy Spirit. So, let's finish that off because I am getting a little hungry. Matter of fact, I was so excited after finishing the last episode, I just wanted to keep going. My stomach's barking at me. So we waited another 7 days. That's important. And sent out a dove, and then now the doves returned with that olive branch. So we knew he could go out. And Noah, okay, now it came about in so again, this is another specific landmark in history, historical year. Now it came about in the 601st year, in the first month, on the first of the month, the water was dried up from the earth. Then Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the surface of the ground was dried up. I can imagine the relief he felt after hurling every day. I've got sea legs. I love being on the water. I love being on boats. I've been on the water my whole life thanks to my parents. Very comfortable. But I would have been hurling with all those whirlpools and monsoons. I mean, bigger than anything we've seen these days. I would have just, hurled my brains out. So he finally sees dry land. I would imagine that's extremely exciting. In the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dry. So it's just reiterating that he saw dry land, and then it continued to dry, and now the earth is dry, which means, my nose is itching. Not that the whole earth isn't covered in some water. I believe that's obvious that the waters receded into oceans, being the caverns created by this great explosion of the deeps bursting, and that's how we got our oceans. There's all this water. More water on the surface than was prior to the deluge. That's a big thing that changed. We talked about in the last episode, the earth was actually a tad bit fatter. We believe based on, anyway, I'm going on a tangent, very intellectually believe based on evidence that the earth was a little bit fatter, to put it crudely, a little bit more inflated, like an inflated balloon. And when that mile worth of this inner core burst through, as a cubic footage I can't even calculate, left the interior of the earth, it shrunk a little bit. And these fractures came up. And what we now see is plate tectonics. These fractures all over the earth happened, and boom, mountains happened. Well, these giant caverns happened. And as we read here, the waters are going down, the earth is drying up, but that just means that there's walkable land, what we would call the continents now. and the water is receding into the oceans. I'm not trying to insult anybody. I think that's obvious. Then got out of the ark. Okay, sorry. Then God spoke to Noah, saying, "Go out of the ark, you and your wife and your son's wife with you." Interesting note, Noah didn't just immediately jump off the ark, even after having spent all that time and puking everywhere. Stupid side note of mine. He didn't just immediately run off. He was still waiting on the Lord's time. Can you imagine waiting all that time and then waiting some more? Oh, man. Oh, that reminds me of a situation I don't even want to bring up. And I'm sure you have situations like that in your life. We waited so long for something, so long, years, decades. And then it comes, it's right there. And then you find out, oh you got to wait some more. Totally, just, you got to wait some more. Anyway, these ancestors of ours felt the same thing we feel. That's why studying this today is still so potent. Noah felt those same things we feel. And he's standing there, and finally the Lord's saying, okay, go out of the ark. And the Lord loves Noah. So keep in mind, in the background this whole time, the Lord is protecting Noah so that Noah doesn't just rush off the ark and sink in some water that isn't, land that isn't fully dry. Quicksand, I imagine, was everywhere initially. It's all quicksand, or the equivalent thereof. Everything is mudslides. Yes, that's a better phrase. Everything is shifting. These giant uplifts that have just recently occurred in the last 150 days, 150 plus 40, 190 days, these giant uplifts that have occurred, they're all settling. As the water goes down, all this debris, again, I'm speculating here, but as the water goes down, all this debris is everywhere. I mean, giant trees bigger than we've ever seen, bigger than the redwoods even. Giant trees. I mean, trees the size, I believe we have seen, trees the size of a town, trees the size of, a city block. I mean, just unreal size. Mushrooms, fungi that size, animals, massive, as we've seen the bones. Absolutely. An intelligent Christian never debunks fossils that are there. I mean, massive animals. It makes total sense. All these massive things are floating as debris, and so they're settling, and as these uplifts are also cresting the water, these debris are sliding down. And think about it logically. The water's receding, these uplifts are happening, the debris sliding down. So everything, in my opinion, I haven't really thought about this before, everything as it's drying up, water receding, is a mudslide. I never thought of it. Everything is a mudslide. I mean, even solid bedrock granite up in a mountain, it's just boulders just falling, rocks, what do you call it? Falling rock, warning of falling rock. Everywhere, constantly, and that's how we get the earth we see today, the Grand Canyon. These massive formations exposed up above the earth we can't explain, that are well over 5,000 years old. Not well over, but 5,000 years old or older, right there, exposed above the surface. These massive things. And so I believe the Lord, to this point, the Lord is keeping Noah safe by not letting him off the ark yet. Just like we do with the kids. Kids really want to go out in that street and go ride the bike. A more potent example is they're playing basketball and it's 18-19 and the ball rolls out in the street. They really want to get that ball and they're really not thinking straight because they're heightened and they're excited and they've been cooped up and they're at the end of the game and they are ready to go and they got to go get that ball. And as a loving, benevolent one, it's the God image in that as your parent, which is your, on this chart, now we'll get to the chart. As your parent, this image is your parent's going to stop you. As a parent, I'm going to stop my child from, don't go out there yet. Don't go out there yet because I can see this giant boulder rolling down the mountain. Or in this case, a truck coming down the street. Truck's not speeding, just a normal truck coming down the street. Boom! Total accident would have happened. Child died. Person in the car did nothing wrong. Horrible situation. Feels guilty for. I mean, avoiding that situation is not going to be seen by my kids. All they're going to see is, Dad, dang it! Come on, we're trying to finish. What are you doing? But it doesn't say Noah complained. I just want to highlight that as a side note. It actually says the opposite. It constantly says that Noah obeyed. So I just want to paint that for us. There's all these lessons I can learn through this. And that's what I want to share. So now let's actually mention this. Speaking of parents, so there's this image I've used many times, and since we're talking about a flood that, in my opinion, was global, I don't want to piss off anyone, I don't want to assert anything because I'm not a geologist. In my humble opinion and in my research, there was a universal flood. And I find that many people today definitely focus on worldwide, global issues. The reason why some of this is written upside down will make sense in a minute, hopefully. I'm kind of weird. I just came up with this. But the upside down is not relevant. It's just so it can be read when this is flipped. That's all it is. So, your global concepts, your world view, which is important. The earth, the universe. I feel like many folks today, perhaps, definitely prioritize things in this way. That's what this image shows, is the way I believe that folks can perceive things and prioritize things, mainly. What I've noticed in my life, and I am an unwise man, so take it for what it is. But I think that many people today seem to detract themselves. The keyboard of the computer affords that very conveniently. Devil's advocate, I use the computer a whole lot. Totally admitting that as a side note. Obviously, half of this memorabilia is based on a computer console. So, without going on too much of a tangent, I feel that people are able to detract, and therefore they're blasting out and literally focusing their lives around these global concepts, which do sound good, and they are on the importance scale. So, by the way, what I should highlight is this: everything on here is important. I should have started by saying that. Everything on here is important. I would say these are the most important things to focus on as a man or woman, as a human being, a Homo sapien, as we discussed in prior videos. As our species, our kind of animal, which happens to be the same kind, species, race, same race, human race, beautiful thing. I keep losing track of where I'm going. The human race, anyway, globally. My brain, I'm losing my brain. But back to the concept. Folks are very focused on, yes, this is the importance scale. Everything here is important. And folks, I feel like naturally as humans, we prioritize things, to put it simply. I feel like I'm braiding this. As humans, we prioritize things naturally. That's what we do. And I think, for me, that's why this instruction manual is so essential. So, to explain, I believe that the instruction manual, the scripture here, gives us a solid list of importance, of priority on the importance chart. All these are important. I believe we have a direct roadmap for navigating them, prioritizing them correctly. And I feel like a lot of the folks around me let their feelings guide them, and it is a very important, because this is important, it's a very important notion to be bothered with a worldwide famine, for instance, a worldwide pandemic, which has been a hot topic in the last half decade, or more, the worldwide anything, or the UN even birthing that in the last several decades. These all seem to be at the height, just to spoil it and jump to the top. That seems to be the height of folks, some folks, that's a quantified statement. Some folks' focus. That seems to be at the pinnacle. And we also see, on the importance scale, we see many people who assert their country and pride in the country. And that, I believe, is extremely important. I also feel that these days, pride in, for instance, you have USA here. The being written upside down, again, is just a mechanism I'll use later. It's not a sign of disrespect in any way. Quite the opposite. The USA happens to be my country, but I want it to apply to everyone. Your country, pride in that is important. This is a chart of importance. Everything on here is important. I personally believe that the biblical text even reinforces the notion that loving our country and protecting our country is important. I believe it's overshadowed a lot of times by some of those same peers by asserting the UN issues even greater, world issues, world war issues, and so on. And they have their reasoning for that. Those are important. The next would be state, right? A bit smaller. That's more specific. State pride. But, somebody from Texas or somebody from Delaware, I happen to be from, I almost wrote that up there, from Delaware or Wisconsin, if someone is from Wisconsin and very passionate about their state, someone from Delaware might not, they're not going to prioritize that as much as their love of the country. They're going to love their fellow state, but it's just a bit smaller. That's what this is meant to represent. They're going to love their fellow state. Wisconsin is going to love Delaware. We're the 50 United States of America, and we love each other. That's what this represents. But I think the folks in Delaware would say the same about the folks in Wisconsin. They would love their country collectively a bit more than the individual arbitrary state of Texas or Wisconsin or whatever. Those are hypothetical examples. So they're a bit less. Same would go for your county. In your county, you may take direction from. That also applies to direction, right? If your state gives you an ordinance, I think of the cannabis issue lately. There's still a federal guideline that's greater. That's going to overlap that, and that's a concern for some folks. And then on down, you would have your more specific county concerns, your county pride, also your county ordinances. And then just more specific, that's what this chart represents, down to your city. Then you have your community and neighbors. And what I'm painting is, I believe these days, these fall far less important to some of my neighbors. I've been noticing that the community, or even our city pride, keeping our city on a goal the way it's been originated from our ancestors. There's a chain of title, by the way, for the county of Smith County, and specifically the city of Tyler, which is where I spent most of my early years, most of the first 10 years of my life. So I think of Tyler, Texas as my big hometown, and spent most of my life in the South area around Billard and Foot. I love it. And that's my city and my county. And I feel like when I assert pride in that, several of my neighbors and friends love to assert that the state guidelines are more important than that, as this scale would assert, and they have their reasonings for that. That's what this image asserts. The state being more important, the country. If the country needs to, I think of a financial issue or a welfare issue, If a community feels like they don't want to enable, for instance, for a particular reason, they don't want to enable something and they don't want as much of particular fundage to go to a welfare, for instance, just to touch on a hot topic, I guess, but not try to take sides. Just if a community, for instance, a community or a city decides to lessen that, for instance, not do away with it, lessen it, that would be a hot topic, and that would get the country's attention possibly, and the federal would come down and say, perhaps the Fed would come down and say, oh no, you can't do that. We're more important than you. And I guess a better way to say that in this presentation is folks would support that notion. Based on this, folks would support a country. That's a better way to say it. Possibly some folks would support a country coming in and telling the city, no, you can't make that guideline because our worldview is oriented in this direction. That's what this is supposed to iterate. Our worldview is oriented in this direction. The country certainly is more important. It's higher on the scale. It's higher on the scale. That's what this is meant to represent. And especially considering worldviews and this global notion of wanting to save everyone, which is a great notion. The notion of a utopian pursuit that would certainly supersede an individual community needing to, let's say another scenario, they hit a famine in a particular city or county. And of course, our country's great. We account for that. But let's say in a scenario, people would support the country stepping in if that community said, no, we need to restrict some of the grain that we've been giving to the country, or the army, for instance. That's another example. The army is something I support very much, by the way. But let's say a community hit on hard times, hit a famine in a particular area, and they say, oh man, we really can't afford to give that we want to. We love the army, but we just can't give. There's certain people who would view a worldview to say, well, that's just tough. The country has stipulated the ordinance, the law, and that is meant to be followed. And they have their reasoning for that. This chart is oriented in this fashion because this is a logical, human-based way to think up to a point. I would say that men and women who are highly educated would come up with something like this, a worldview like this, if they still fell a little bit short of concluding their research. And that's not meant to be offensive, that's meant to be encouraging. In my opinion, a highly educated person could come up with this as a worldview, and in my opinion, I would encouragingly say, perhaps they just need to go a bit further. Perhaps they've read 10 books or 100 books. Perhaps they've read, I know some people probably have read 1,000 books. Perhaps that number's low for some. I can't read very well, so I haven't read many. I've read books, I've studied them, I don't want to infer that, but I have to go through other means to glean the book because I'm very slow. Another way to say that is it just takes me forever to read something. I have to sometimes rely on different ways to glean it. But the deduction that some folks would come up to with this, I believe, is logical up to a point. Now, to transition, actually on the way we see a bit less to finish off this chart here. Under the community, I see just a total erosion of a respect of the mother and father, the patriarchy and matriarchy. I absolutely see folks seeing that far more subordinate to following your state rules. For instance, if your mama teaches you that this is wrong and the state says, oh, this is fine, I definitely see people seeing that as not only a little more important, way more important than what mom and dad said. In the contrast, if mom says something is appropriate, that is righteous, and the state says, no, that's wrong and that's illegal, folks say the same way, that the state is not only more important, but far more important than what mom and dad said. I'll paint here in a minute how I feel like that's very dangerous. But that is the conclusion you would come to if you assert the country so much, if you assert the world even above that, and the state so much in the county. This is the way I believe it can only be oriented. All these things are important. These are the top 8 things of importance of all. So nothing can be left out, nor anything added. All these are important. I believe, so there's only so many notches left, is my point. Once you place all these on here, once you get down to here, there's only 2 notches left. There's only 2 notches left. So that's the only place to put mom and dad. That's my deduction there. Then the last one is God. The truth about a creator is so diminished and so confuddled, thanks to the deceiver, I would assert. And we helped him. That's what the testament of the garden with Adam and Eve testifies to. We repeat it every generation. Anyone who wants to try to throw stones at Grandpa Adam and Grandma Eve is not looking at themselves. Not looking at themselves. Christ said, don't cast a stone without looking at the plank in your own eye. Or don't point out a thorn without looking at the plank in your own eye. So, this is a view that I believe most would have. And I'm sorry my easel is so terrible. This isn't an easel. It's a chair. So, now, what I believe, in my humble opinion, we have a roadmap in this thing called the Holy Bible, which is why we're studying Genesis. Matter of fact, I'm just going to bring this up here. Screw the easel. Hopefully this is on the camera. I believe we have a direct roadmap in here to orient all these priorities, all these important things that we've listed. I believe we have a roadmap to where all these things are important, including global issues and world issues. Important. All these things are very important. The most important 8 things, in my opinion. The most important 8 things of all in existence. So you have global and world issues. But I believe that Yahweh, this is the way his name would be spelled in English, YHWH, and again, Hebrew didn't have vowels, but you would just say Yahweh. And it's, if I was calmer, you'd be Yahweh. So the Ve is actually stuck in as Yahweh. And like a German would say a W, Ve. And what I was reminded one time by a theologian is to say it that way. Say, Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh. His name is the breath of life. Yahweh, Yahweh. I realize there's some folks who would call that creepy these days, but I think it's beautiful. His name, Yahweh, is the breath of life. We say his name every day, hundreds of times a day. Everyone. It's incredible when you think of it that way. So, if we read the roadmap indicated in the instruction manual, we call the Holy Bible these days, we see Yahweh presented as the pinnacle of our concern. But why? Why would we do that? He says if you orient your priorities this way, you will find success in all, including all the other items listed on the importance chart. I'm paraphrasing, but Lord, correct me if I'm wrong, and Holy Spirit, direct me. I feel like he says, if you put me at the pinnacle, if I am the focus of your mind when you go to bed at night, and then I'm also the focus of your mind when you wake up in the morning, and in your pursuits through the day, you will find success in all the other important things in life. And in fact, they themselves have a hierarchy. That's why I drew it in the shape of a pyramid. I believe the most important is located at the top in this image, and that would be imaged by Yahweh. And the Lord told us specifically, the mother and the father, the patriarch of the family, is the most crucial, and only the most crucial by the most important factor, which is the matriarch. The matriarch is the most important, I would argue, for the most essential entity, the patriarch. They go hand in hand, inseparable in God's plan. That's where the Hebrews came up with the term marriage. Marriage has a specific origin. That term in the English language has a specific origin in Hebrew, but has also been bastardized like the term Christian. Its original origin meant a man and a woman cleaving from their mother and father and joining in the eyes of the Lord, before the Lord, making vows in front of the Lord. These are specific road marks for a man and woman to join in this unique thing introduced called marriage. There were always civil unions. There were always mates. That's the way the humans have always existed. The sons of Cain had civil unions and mates. The sons of Noah had other civil unions and mates, but in the core of their family, what would have been asserted is a righteous cleaving from mom and dad, standing in front of the Lord and making vows to one another. This is that image of marriage. That's why I'm harping on it so much. America has kind of stolen the term. That's a little harsh. They've recoined the term to mean civil union. So even on a tax form, there's a checkbox for divorced and there's a checkbox for marriage. And people married, there people who have only done civil unions, such as a minister from another faith or a judge, which is very acceptable, or a captain of a sea vessel. These are all civil unions, and they're very important. I don't want to diminish any of those. Those are all matehoods, civil unions, amazing proclamations to the public, which is what they're meant to be. However, the Hebrews introduced a specific subset of that called marriage, where a man and a woman were joined together in the sight of Yahweh, and that was called marriage. So they're different things. Civil unions are extremely important, extremely potent part of our society, a potent proclamation, if you will. But the marriage is something different. Marriage is something specific. That's why you found so many folks upset when the term marriage has been used to apply to different things in the last few years. I won't even go on tangents, but I want to clarify, a lot of those folks aren't eloquent enough to describe what they're trying to say. What they're trying to convey, I believe, is that marriage is an actual thing, a subset of mating, a subset of civil unions. There's different types of civil unions. And I think that's what the tax form, for instance, the IRS form should say. Should say civil union, your checkbox. And that would include marriages. But marriages are a specific thing. So that's a touchy point for people who understand it. So let me be encouraged to all people. Be patient with folks who get upset with what they feel is the misuse of that term. Because they really do have a point. Just from a literary standpoint. Not morally. I'm not talking about ethics or morality. From a literary standpoint, the term marriage actually means a man and a woman cleaving from mother and father, standing before Yahweh and making vows together in front of Yahweh. It's a specific roadmap. So someone who takes a local minister of a Buddhist faith and joins with his mate in a civil union is not following just a specific roadmap from a literary standpoint. So the Lord puts that very high on the importance list. He says the patriarch and the matriarch are to emulate me and my bride. Later on, he defines that bride as the church. So you have Jesus, who is part of Yahweh. I didn't want to spend too much time expanding on the Trinity because it'll take videos, and we will do that. But in this video, I didn't want to do it. You have the Trinity here. So you have Christ and his bride, which is the church, right? The church is that image of Christ in the Trinity, and the church is like the patriarch and the matriarch. So the Lord puts that very high on the importance scale, in my opinion. Just going from a literary standpoint, strictly based on what the text says. I'm not a wise man. This is not my opinion. I happen to agree with it, but it's not my opinion. I didn't come up with this. The next the Lord would paint on the roadmap, I believe, is your pastoral purview, your immediate vicinity right outside your home. So the patriarch and matriarch is the home. That includes the kids following them, the whole unit of the home. That's what this is meant to represent. I just abbreviated all this. This level, the third level of importance, in my opinion, and it covers more people. So the way this scale branches out is Yahweh is a Trinity. That's a small number, if you will. The patriarch and the matriarch is two, a bit less anyway. But down here, as we go down, point is, it will involve more and more folks. Yes. And that's what this line in this version of the chart represents, is more and more folks, more and more children of God, more and more human beings. But the important scale is oriented from top to bottom, like a pyramid. This is most important. And then third level would be your pastor, shepherd, your church body. The community level, for someone who isn't in a church. I also wanted to equate this to everyone, secular, Christian, what have you. There's specific examples like church or pastor would apply to a Christian perhaps, but shepherd could apply to anyone who's following someone. Community, neighbors, that's what this level is. The Lord finds that very important. He wants you to take care of your neighbors. Love your neighbor as your friend. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. He wants you to love your neighbors as yourself. So that's very high on the importance scale. It involves a few more people than just your family. That's what it was. So this is the Trinity. This is your family, not just the patriarch and matriarch, not just two. It's, your family, 5, give or take, right here. Then you have your church body, smaller than, smaller than the whole town, perhaps. Oh, got paper towel. Smaller than the whole town, perhaps, but a bit larger than the family. Then the fourth level, and you already know where we're going with this, is the city. City's important, but if a city ordinance contradicts with what mom and dad said, you already know what I would conclude. Same with the church. If the city ordinance goes against what even the church says, that is something to be concerned with, in my opinion. That's what this priority scale would show. Sorry, I'm wiping up underneath my feet. Multitasking. Then the county. So I'm very big on counties. That's where my business resides. I research all 254 in Texas for heirship and wills and death certificates and divorces and marriages and births, all that kind of stuff. Conveyances of property. So counties, very big in my life. But if the interaction with the county, an ordinance of the county, a law of the county contradicts with the church, much less my mom and dad, much less Yahweh himself, I have my conclusion. I have my answer because I've oriented my life based on the roadmap of the instruction manual. That's the conclusion there. It's just an image. I am crude. I am not a good orator. I've been shaking it all around. I've spilt juice on my foot. I'm just a man and I'm broken, so please forgive me. But I would just like to reach out to my brethren. I am a social person as much as I like to hide in my cave. My mother always knows the truth, for instance, and always reminds everyone, including me, that I am a social butterfly. But I just want to share. I want to talk. And I want that thing to stay up there. But it ain't gonna. So anyway, let's go ahead and cap it off there. I'm going to go get me some food. And we will jump back in to Genesis chapter 8 next time. Catch you on the flip side.